Hi, Technosis here, and I have an idea on how to make a propellantless drive within the confines of a flying saucer spaceshipy thing. Okay, what is exactly going on when we look at these Navy videos of the Tic Tac, for example, this light uppy ball that's zipping around the sky? Why do they all seem to light uppy ball and supposed to chrome disc? Unless they're crashed, of course. But I've yet to see a picture of a crashed one, so then again, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, right? I digress, though. How do we make a flying saucer? That is the question. And that is a question I've been seeking answers to for a very long time. And by God, we going to do it one of these days, okay? Frankly, if any of you out there knows somebody who wants to put me to work and put some money in my hands, some tools in my hands, I will literally tirelessly attempt to try and make this machine. So help me God. um. All right. Michael Faraday, his conceptualizations on the electron and some of these other things is it's one unit of dielectricity. I want to say that you have to understand these two concepts. Or before I get into the Michael Faraday stuff, you need to have a simple grasp of these two concepts: space and counter space. Space is everything between objects, and everything object is counter space. There are weird amalgams of these two things, which would be like fluids and air, which you can get. You can climb in the water, you can go swimming in the water, and you can are in the air, and it's filled with counterspatial little BBs of stuff, but like it's not space entirely. It's composed of space, partly space. But like the vacuum of space is like raw space, and that has zero properties. We all say it has like space time and all this other like weird stretching and warping of space, but no. Static. It's like static, okay? Static electric. The universe is made out of love, and love is magnetism. I mean, not the magnetism we conventionally say, but mutual mass acceleration being like things gravitating to one another. That attraction is the fundamental force of the universe. A magnet, for example, is a quantum phenomenon brought macroscopic due to the fact that there are all these little valence bands inside the neodymium iron boron that are all aligned in a certain direction. And they create basically like a yin yang plane of inertia, like a spinning disk at the very center of the magnet. And that gives rise to the magnetic field, the pole of the north and the south on the magnet. And so, for our flying spaceship, we need to create basically a plane of inertia inside the ship to give it vectoring. This plane of inertia, God, I don't know how we're going to do this. I have visions of a homopolar generator, which is basically a big metallic disc that spins in the center, and that's like got a wire on the edge of it and a wire going through the middle of it, and you draw a current off of either end of it because it's rotating within a magnetic field, and that causes the electric energy to push off to the outer edge. Now I think the idea is you make a so the cathode end of a battery is the part that's drawing, is the emptiness, is the null point, is the stillness. It's the destination for the negative. The negative is traveling through the circuit and making its way back to the positive. So you're going to take the center of your homopolar generator, make that the positive, and you're going to run it to the top of your ship with a little ball at the top. And then you're going to spin that dynamo up, and ideally, it's not going to be the 1 or 2 volts that your homopolar generator. I mean, this is going to be a big one, so maybe it's like 20 volts or 24 volts. It's not going to, you're going to need enormous amounts of voltage. All right, so this little point at the top has to go through some sort of Tesla coil system to drive the voltage up to like 25 million. 25 million volts. All right, this is literally just a number I'm pulling out of my butt at the moment. But I imagine it's going to be in this realm. That much pressure to make the system work. All right, so we'll have to see when the time comes. I don't even know if we have a system that does that much voltage, but we'll find out. Sooner or later. So Holman Polar Generator drives this little point to ridiculously high levels of high pressure positivity, like cathode energy. And then we're driving all the negativity, all the energy that we're pulling out to make this vacuum here is being pushed out to the bottom edge of the spaceship. And so what we're trying to do is get this to like reach equilibrium, but across the outside of the ship. Because we're trying to make a smoke ring, okay? Funny things about smoke rings is smoke rings are coherent packets of energy made literally out of the medium in which they travel through. So, like a whirlpool in water, you can say, look at that whirlpool. The whirlpool is made of water. It's really an absence of water in some ways, and emotion, water and motion, but it's a coherent structure made of energy that sits there in the water and doesn't just spread out into the universe immediately. It kind of keeps spinning, until it runs out. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to use principles like this, which are efficient, super efficient principles. If you can keep your energy self-contained like that. Obviously, we're using device. You can't. Like here, example of this. Those fusion generators or fusion reactors they're trying to make right now that use the enormous numbers of magnets to hold the hot gases in the center of the machine. They're using the magnets because if the gases touched anything, literally physically at all, it would just destroy it. So what we have to do is kind of, without touching it, move the gas or the energy around us in a coherent way. Because obviously, if you touch it, it's going to blow you to pieces. I mean, all seriousness here, 25 million volts at even a little pico amp would be like kaboom. I mean, obviously, you get zapped by static electricity, which is around a million volts probably somewhere, but that's tiny, tiny amounts of current. I mean, obviously, because that doorknob, how much charge could that poor doorknob hold anyway? It's it's like this big. Come on. It's not a giant parallel plate capacitor the size of a skyscraper. Although, I don't know why I'm talking about that. Alright, so the idea is the flying saucer is basically a capacitor, a cleverly designed asymmetric capacitor that then you drive to 25 million volts, and then you tap it from inside the ship. You run some wires from one end of the parallel plate to the other end of the parallel plate with a MOSFET, special MOSFET on the inside that then feeds to an antenna, basically an antenna at the base of the spacecraft. That we're going to use spheres. When you use really high voltages like these, you use hollow spherical ball-shaped thingies usually because sharp edges give a place for the charge to build up. So you got to use curvilinear round edges so the charge doesn't build up anywhere and go off into space and you get huge leakage. You have used these round shapes that allow a big charge to build up on them without, basically bleeding off. And that is going to be connected to a basically these three spheres at the base of the ship are all going to be connected to their own little MOSFET. And these MOSFETs are then going to oscillate at a frequency high enough to couple with induction to the nearby ether, or literally the ether around them. So the ether around them is going to receive this RF signal that's being drawn from the parallel plate capacitor that is the spaceship. And it's going to be at a high enough oscillation to induce the nearby ether. And that induction and then release of pressure and thus attempted to try and recycle back up to the cathode portion of the circuit is going to create basically what I imagine to be like an EMF smoke ring. Like a smoke ring made out of electromagnetism. And this electromagnetic smoke ring is going to align or direct all the charge around the ship in such a manner that it's going to create set of ether perturbations in line with the object attracting it, which would be the Earth. I mean, the nearest body, I guess, the Earth, which is pulling upon it the most powerfully. It's going to create this coherent EMF signal down into or down towards the Earth. And whether this works or not, I have no idea. But I mean, maybe it doesn't produce the signal towards the Earth. It may just like like so. I guess I'm trying to find some point of responsibility. I don't think there is one. It's not like the sun or the Earth is pulling out upon us and pulling us into it. Really, um, I don't know how to language this concept of what the heck's going on there ultimately. But I want to say that you create a point of pressure. So normally between all objects, there's a vacuum point like in the circuit that we're creating inside the spaceship with the positive cathode end. The positive cathode end is in a way a vacuum. It's like an emptiness. It's an emptying of charge to stilling, like in the refrigerator when you have the cold side and everything is getting calmed down and stiller. It's like electrically there's a calmness or stillness inside the cathode that the opposite energy of which would be the anode was trying to like kind of go back and disturb and push back, put that disturbance back into it. You create there's a stillness in the normal stillness of the universe. All objects around a gravitating body or gravitational body, all things are gravitational. This is the funny thing. All like every atom has electrons or units of dielectricity like racing around it, which is ultimately this is the where the gravity comes from. Is the field phenomenon generated by like the motion of atoms, I guess. Yeah, the motion of atoms creates fields, and these fields interact with one another. And the between all between all counterspatial objects, there's a relationship in space of a null pressure point between the two that draws the two together. And it doesn't, yeah, it draws them proportional to their mass towards one another. And I think there's a way purely electrically to disturb that null pressure point between the two. And I don't know if it's to like pump it up, like push heat at it or like light or whatever. But yeah, ultimately I think that's what's going on. Now there's an alternate theory that I have too, that somehow in the process of the creation of this device, like where I'm talking about, the Faraday cage like effect of the metal hull and the voltages being used all moving in like a symmetric formation or symmetric set of flow was going to create what I would call like, so like how the magnet is an atomic phenomenon brought macroscopic in the form of the magnetic field, because the magnetic field is just basically how a field would perform if it was coherent. A coherent field performs on the atomic scale, is now macroscopic and can pick up paper clips. That in a sense, that field is no longer now the tiny little atom-sized thing. It's big enough to like reach out into space and actually observably move crap around on the table or pick it up, for example. Um, Somehow the spaceship is going what I would call superluminal, or it is becoming luminal. It is a. It's no longer interacting with the surrounding environment like a physical object. It's now acting much more like for lack of a better understanding, a photon. Um, like just a coherent waveform of light. And I mean, that's yeah, that's really just an idea because I don't know how to explain that. Um, yeah, I don't know how to explain that. But yeah, essentially you're acting like a point of light, and that's how your mass and all this other stuff is all gone wacky. Because electrically, yeah, from the outside you look like light. Also, though, too, I would imagine, based on some of the ideas that I've come across in this, the creation of high frequency radio wave emission, or radio EMF emission at the base of the ship to cause propulsion. Um, there may be some aspect of this that creates a signal that's extremely unique. So if you had a digital eye or ear, I should say, a digital ear, listening for just the sound of EMF, you could probably set it up to listen for this type of engine. And I don't think it would be difficult to detect. Unless, I mean, obviously, unless you had some sort of EMF stealth engine, which I'm not even, like, let's not go there. I think that there's, and this is me being conspiratorial, but I think there's a way if you make this device that you can definitely get heard. Someone's going to hear you, turn it on, and they're going to come asking questions because they're going to be able to triangulate your location like GPS because you're going to be making a really loud pinging noise like deet. They're going to be like, hey, what you doing over there? So take this all with a grain of salt. I don't even know. Me being horribly conspiratorial, I sound like a crazy person. I know. Who doesn't these days? Let's just be honest. Like the Romans who ate too much lead in their diet somehow and went bonkers. Our culture is eating too much plastic and rainbow candy. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way.